And we're back, part 2. He pried out the lid. Inside was a stack of index cards, scrawled with handwriting he'd already come to recognize. He knew instantly that he held in his hand Vola's personal truths, the ones that she kept hidden. He snapped down the lid, not wanting to invade her privacy, but it was too late. He'd read the top one. I would have been a good teacher. It wasn't a terrible truth, and it didn't even seem all that personal. Still, he wished he hadn't seen it. He pushed the tin back into the niche and slid the book in after it, just as Vola came back in. He pointed to the marionettes. I've got it now. Let's do the scene. But Vola only walked to her workbench and poured oil onto a wet stone. Not yet. We need a stage first. I'll put something together when I've got some free time. A stage? You didn't say anything about a stage. The marionettes don't just swing around in thin air over a couple of hay bales. She turned around and raised a palm to cut off Peter's protest. Listen, boy, I will see that soldier's story the way it should be seen. You'll have to respect how much that means to me, even if you don't understand it, which you should, by the way. You carrying that charm around, it's the same thing. You're telling that story of your mother for her. But it will take so long, and there's no hurry. You're going to be here another week anyways. She clumped back to the workbench, sat down hard, and began selecting tools. Discussion over. Peter flung himself onto a stack of hay bales. Another week of this, and he'd go crazy. The words struck him. He didn't think of Vola as crazy anymore. He propped himself on his elbows and studied her as she polished her tools, noticing how carefully she lifted and cleaned each one. How, when she finished, she laid it precisely in its place. There was a calm purposefulness to her movements that he liked, a predictability. Francois waddled in and yawned. He climbed to a crotch in the rafters above the workbench and started washing himself before a nap. It occurred to Peter that, like Francois, he'd grown comfortable with Vola. Peter craned his head to see what she was making. A handle. She brought in a broken hoe, and she was giving it a new handle. A simple thing, and yet it struck him as almost magic. Like his crutches. Before he'd had them, he'd been helpless. Vola had nailed a couple of boards together, and now he could swing over miles of rough country, quick and sure. Magic. He pulled the crutches over and braced them under his arms, feeling the familiar comfort their sturdy strength brought. He swung over to the workbench. I want to make something. Will you show me? Vola leaned back to study him hard. After what seemed a full minute, she nodded. No sense letting your brain go to rot. You know anything at all about working with wood? Carve away from yourself. I know that much. Well, that's a start. That's not what I meant, though. Vola chose a fresh block from her wood bin and centered it on the workbench. Who is the master here? Excuse me? Who is the boss, me or the wood? Peter understood that this was a test. He looked at the wood, blank and still, waiting. Then he looked at the neat arcs of gleaming tools, so eager to cut, they seemed to tremble. You're the master. Vola nodded. She selected a spoon-tipped chisel and a mallet, then gave the block the same searching look she'd given him a few minutes ago, as if she were trying to read some secret message below its surface. She tapped the chisel into the fresh wood. It cut with a clean snap, and curled chip flipped onto the bench. She turned to Peter. And now? Who is the master now? Vola's face told him nothing, but the wood, its missing wedge now a question demanding a response, spoke. The wood is, he said, certain. That's right, Vola agreed. From this moment on, the wood is the master. The carver is servant to the wood. All craftsmen are servants to the craft. Once you decide what you want to make, the project is the boss. You know what you want to make? The answer came right away. How do you carve a fox? As soon as the words left his mouth, Peter braced for the answer he figured was coming, about how he should figure it out for himself. But Vola surprised him. Michelangelo was once asked how he created one of his statues. He said, I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. Might be a good way to think about it. Of course, if you're going to try to find the fox in the wood, you'll have to start with some wood. She motioned Peter to follow her to the wood bin. Different woods, different merits. Basswood's easy to carve, holds fine detail, and it's light. I use it for the marionettes' heads. Now, this pine, white ash is good for baseball bats, Peter offered. It's really hard. Vola passed the pine block from one hand to the other in silence for a moment. Speaking of which, she turned to Peter, you really don't own a bat? You love baseball, but don't own a bat? I'm a fielder. So what? You wait for someone to hit the ball, then you go get it? That's just reacting. Don't you want to hit too? That's not how it is. Once I've got the ball, I'm in control. I'm not reacting. I'm making choices. And I hit. The team has bats. You don't know baseball. Maybe I don't know baseball. She tossed the wood back into the bin with a shrug. But I'm starting to know you, and I think you need yourself a bat. Peter turned to the bin. He ran his hands through the blocks of wood while the image of blue glass shattering over white roses swept him. The image he could avoid when he stood at the plate, a team bat in hand, only by aiming his fiercest concentration on the pitcher's moves. If he owned his own bat again, every time he picked it up, he would see that shattered blue glass over those white roses, and it would wreck him. He lifted a honey-colored piece of wood, just the size Pax had been when he'd found him. How about this? He asked, his breathing tight. It's rippled like fur. Vola looked as if she was biting her lip against more of the bat debate. Butternut, she said finally. Beautiful grain, soft enough. You study it for a while. We'll carve tomorrow. Late that night, as he was about to climb into his hammock bone weary, Peter saw the block of wood he'd propped on the windowsill earlier. He'd barely thought about Pax all day. Guilt swept him. He was becoming foxless, something he hadn't been since he was 7 years old. It had taken a lot longer, a year and 16 days to be exact, he'd figured it out, for a day to go by when he didn't think about his mother. On that day, he'd gone with a friend's family on a camping trip. They'd gotten into canoes in the morning and fished and swum and pitched tents and grilled hot dogs. Only when he climbed into his sleeping bag under the stars had his disloyalty struck him. He'd worried that night that he deserved to be motherless. He pulled her picture out from his pack. Her birthday, the kite. One of the very good memories. The kite hadn't flown. He'd been 6 years old, and really it wasn't anything more than a picture of a dragon taped to some popsicle sticks. Even at that age, he'd known that if his father had been there, somehow the kite's failure would have ruined the afternoon. But he wasn't there, and his mother had just laughed about it, and they'd spread a blanket on the hill and made a picnic of peanut butter and grape juice, and made up story after story about that paper dragon who was too wise to go flying off into the air when so many other adventures were waiting for him on the ground. Peter set the photo on the sill beside the block of wood. He closed his eyes. He needed to visit some memories of Pax, too. Pax, waiting at the door of his pen whenever Peter got home because he'd learned the whine of the school bus brakes, nosing through his backpack for apple cores, peeking out of his sweatshirt pocket. Peter had snuck him into school once. In second grade, he hadn't thought of the consequences to the kit, but had only wanted the secret comfort of his company. There had been a fire drill, and the alarm had terrified Pax. Peter had been sent home, and his father had been angry, but the way the kit had shivered and mewed had been the true punishment. The best memory was a quiet one. The winter before last had been cold, with long stretches when Peter hadn't wanted to leave the fireplace to do his homework. It had been so cold that his father had relented and allowed Pax inside early to stretch out close to the fire. Pax would doze with his muzzle and front paws getting so hot that Peter kept checking them. Peter remembered his knuckles drifting down as he read his story text to knead the fur between his pet's shoulder blades. Peace. He opened his eyes and lifted the butternut block, and in the pale light of the moon, he saw the fox in the wood. Oh, I like that chapter. It was long. I liked it. There was no sadness, really, besides him discussing his memories with Peter and with Pax and his mom. But I like that chapter. I really, really like Vola a lot. I like Vola and Peter's relationship. What are you guys thinking? What did you think about the chapter yesterday? What do you think about the chapter today? We start again tomorrow with Pax again. What do you think is going to happen? We left off Pax yesterday with a very sad note. Also, I want to point out, guys, we're almost kind of done. Oh, we only have this much more left. It makes me very sad. We've read this much. We have this much left. We're coming towards the end. Tomorrow is chapter 19, and in this book there are 34 chapters. So, but it looks like the remaining chapters might be short. If we do finish Pax before the end of the year, then I will spend the rest of the days still posting daily, and I will do short read alouds. So like picture books, those are fun. Not like little baby picture books, but like, like the ones that we read in class. We'll start those too. So there will never be a day where I do not read to you guys for the remainder of this school year. I miss you guys. I love you so much. I hope that you are just kind of relaxing today. I do not need you to go play in the rain, although I think the rain has stopped. But just relax, be near people that you love. I am going to spend the rest of the day pigging out. Love you guys. See you tomorrow. Mwah.